The interaction between size and weight causes an emergent feature to arise, and that feature is called fullness. Fullness is the sound of like how balanced the size and the weight are, or how saturated size and weight are. Um, so we can think that the weight is kind of the energy filling the space, and size is kind of the way that that energy gets concentrated. And if the size gets really small, then less energy is taken in order to fill that space up. So, what does this sound like? Well, let's start by finding an intentionally out of balance kind of sound. So, we're going to begin with an exploration of a large size with a very light weight.
So if I go to this kind of sound, you're going to hear that the size is very large, but the weight is quite light. And in fact, if I kind of take it even further, you're going to hear that this starts to sound kind of like Mickey Mouse, or kind of like, oh, I don't know, maybe Miss Piggy or something, right? Oh, Kermie, right? Like that kind of silly quality. If I bring it a little lower, it might remind you of like a Patrick Star. Regardless, this quality has a very light sound, but the size is too large for how light it is, so it sort of inevitably ends up sounding kind of dopey or kind of silly. Well, there are two ways that we can go about fixing this. We're trying to get to fullness, so we want size and weight to be in balance. Right now, my size is very large. Well, I can get slightly heavier and slightly heavier, and when I reach a certain threshold of weight, what will happen is my size and my weight are going to sound like they're in balance with one another. Suddenly, the voice stops sounding cartoonish and starts sounding kind of typical, right? I might imagine someone talking like this on the street and could kind of be like, okay, that's some dude's voice. I wouldn't necessarily like want to hang out with him, but it's just kind of a neutral masculine but full sound. Right. If I return to Patrick, you can hear that Patrick, like if I heard Patrick on the street, I would look twice. You know what I'm saying? So we want to kind of imagine, right, I can increase the weight kind of incrementally and wind up back at this full sound. Well, this is great if what you're doing is trying to achieve a more masculine sound, then this is perfect. So for any trans masc people who are trying to find a really more like robust, larger, heavier sound, well, start under full, and you're kind of going to get this sound, and you can slowly layer the weight. You want to increase the intensity and the loudness and the like heaviness of the sound, so you can find a much more heavy quality. And then once you hear that it kind of comes in balance, that's the sound you want to aim for long term.
Fundamentally speaking, however, that's not useful if what we're looking for is a feminine voice. My own spit is trying to kill me right now, so I apologize. But if we're hearing that kind of under full sound of, let's say, Patrick Star or Mickey Mouse,
hello, right, like this kind of hollow sound, well, this is not going to do the job for me, and what I need to do is get to fullness from here. Well, in order to get to fullness, I need to aim for that balance of size and weight. If I try to find balance by getting heavier,
That's just going to make the voice sound further androgenized, and that's not the goal.
so I need to find a way to get smaller and smaller.
and smaller and smaller and smaller. And as I start to get smaller, you're going to hear that kind of cartoon dopishness, that cartoon dopiness or oafish quality kind of get deleted. I'll do it again. Pardon me.
I'm going to start here. Hello, hello.
Hello, 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 hello. You can hear there's not really any sign of that like under full hollow sound. That's great. That's what we're looking for. So instead of targeting like size and weight independently, you can start to target fullness and make that your sort of auditory target while you're practicing. It will simplify things. It'll give you one thing to think about rather than thinking about multiple variables at once. Let's listen to that little sort of exploration again.
Hello? Hello?
Hello? Hello? Hello? Well, I can hear that I'm smaller than my bass line, but to my ear, if I get really light, there's still a kind of like a slight hollowness to the sound. Hello? 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 And I don't hate it, but I need to recognize that actually, if I wanted to find a fuller sound, hello? 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 I could get a little smaller still and start to get that balance a little bit better. So listen to that one sequence one last time.
Hello?
Hello, 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 hello. And you'll hear that balance of size and weight start to lock in. Now, if I go further, you're going to hear if I get heavier, it starts to manifest that kind of gnome quality again. Well, that's because I'm too heavy for how small I am, and it starts to get really buzzy and kind of agitating when that sort of imbalance starts to happen. This is something we want to think about. Sometimes people think that this sound is nasal, and it's not. It's just too heavy for how light it is. So if this is where if you're getting to a kind of like cartoonish, really buzzy sound, that just means you need to get a little bit lighter, and you'll still have a very workable, functional voice. See if you can listen to some of those changes happen. Maybe review this clip and see what happens as you start to incorporate this idea of fullness as your primary target.